You're envying the wrong person. That coworker whose car, whose watch, whose vacation photos quietly needle you every time they hit your feed, he might be more trapped than you are. One layoff away from the whole thing folding. And the quiet one, the one you barely notice, the one nobody in the building takes seriously, he's building the exact thing everyone else is only performing. This is his story. And by the end of it, you're going to look around your own office a little differently. Because the person you feel sorry for and the person you actually should be worried about are almost never who you think. His name was Marcus. I won't use his real one, but everything else is exactly as it happened. He sat 2 desks down from me for 11 years. And in 11 years I don't think I ever saw him spend money on anything that wasn't strictly necessary. He drove a beige Camry with 190,000 miles on it. He brought lunch in the same scratched blue container every single day, usually rice, beans, some kind of leftover from the night before. When the rest of us went out for the $15 salads, Marcus stayed at his desk and ate. We thought he was struggling. Some of us, quietly, felt bad for him. We were the ones who should have been pitied. We just didn't know it yet. Here's what none of us understood at the time. Marcus made less money than almost everyone in that department. He was a mid-level analyst on a salary that hadn't moved much in years, call it $58,000. Meanwhile, the guy in the corner, the one we all secretly wanted to be, was pulling 90 plus with bonuses. Marcus should have been the last one standing. Instead, at 49 years old, he walked into our manager's office, handed in his notice, and told us he was done. Not switching jobs. Done. Retired. 14 years before most of us could even dream of it. And the loud guy with the boat? Last I heard, he's still at his desk, still refinancing, still one bad quarter away from a very quiet panic. So how does that happen? How does the person making the least get out first? This is the part everyone gets wrong. So stay with me, because the reason has almost nothing to do with what you're thinking. It's not that Marcus was some genius investor. He wasn't picking hot stocks or timing crashes. It's not that he was cheap in a miserable, joyless way either. I'll get to that, because that assumption is exactly the trap. The real answer is that Marcus understood one thing the rest of us didn't. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only number that actually builds wealth, not your salary. The gap. And the loud guy with the 90 grand had almost no gap at all, because every raise he ever got was already spent before it cleared. Let me put a real number on this, because it's the number that changes everything. According to Vanguard's most recent look at how Americans actually save, the typical worker sets aside a single-digit percentage of their income into retirement accounts. And the median balance for people in their 50s is nowhere near enough to retire on. Read that again. Median. That means half the people your age, right now, have less saved than that already inadequate number. This isn't a story about a few losers falling behind. This is the default outcome of the system running exactly as designed. And that's the reframe I need you to sit with before we go further. When Marcus ate rice at his desk while the rest of us bought salads, we saw a man with no money. What was actually happening was a man converting a boring lunch into ownership of his own time. Every dollar he didn't spend wasn't a dollar lost. It was a tiny employee he hired that would work for him for the rest of his life. We were spending our future employees on avocado and thinking we'd won. It has almost nothing to do with discipline, by the way. That's the part that lets everyone off the hook and traps them at the same time. It's a sequencing problem. Most people spend first and save whatever's left, and there's never anything left, because the human brain will always find a use for money it can see. Marcus flipped the sequence. The money left before he could touch it. That's not superhuman willpower. That's just a different order of operations. An order of operations is invisible until someone points at it. Now watch what that does over time, because this is where the story stops being about a beige Camry and starts being about physics. Say you take $300 a month, roughly the difference between eating out every workday and not, and you put it into a plain, boring, total market index fund. Nothing clever. You do that for 30 years, and the market does what it has done on average over the long run, somewhere around 7 to 8% after inflation. Do you know what $300 a month becomes? Somewhere in the neighborhood of $340,000. From lunch money, the purchase you thought you were making, the salad, was never really competing with a cheaper lunch. It was competing with $350,000. Nobody tells you that at the register, because the register doesn't want you to know. This is what I mean when I say the gap does all the work. You don't have to earn like the corner office guy. You have to keep a gap and protect it, and then time turns the gap into something that looks, from the outside, like luck. Let me introduce you to someone else, because Marcus wasn't unique, he was just early. There's a woman I'll call Priya, a nurse I got to know years later when I started paying attention to how people who actually retire early do it. Priya never cracked $80,000 in her life. Single income for most of it. On paper, invisible. But Priya did one unglamorous thing from the age of 26. every time she got a raise, she moved half of it straight into her retirement account before she ever felt it in her paycheck. She called it paying the future her first. A 2% raise became a 1% lifestyle bump and a 1% permanent deposit into freedom. By 53, she had crossed the line where her investments earned more in a year than she did at work. She kept nursing 2 more years, not because she had to, but because now it was a choice. That word is the entire point. Choice. Here's the part almost nobody can fake. You can lease the car, you can wear the watch, you can post the trip, but you cannot fake the number in the account. The performance of wealth and the possession of wealth are 2 completely different games, and most people are playing the first one thinking it's the second. There's a UBS report on global wealth that makes this brutally clear. Enormous numbers of high-income households carry almost no net worth because the income flows in and flows right back out through payments, leases, and lifestyle. High salary, low freedom. It's one of the most common financial shapes in the developed world, and it's completely invisible from the outside, because that shape drives the nice car. The person who looks like they've made it and the person who's actually made it can stand next to each other in the same parking lot and you would guess wrong every time. Now, I promised I'd deal with the joyless miser assumption, because it's the objection sitting in the back of your mind right now. You're thinking, fine, but Marcus ate rice at his desk for 11 years to retire at 49. What kind of life is that? And that's the thing I misunderstood the longest. Marcus wasn't depriving himself. He'd simply figured out what he actually valued and cut hard on everything else. He didn't care about cars, so he drove the Camry into the ground and felt nothing. He did care about his kids, so he spent freely on their education and their trips without blinking. He wasn't spending less than us. He was spending on purpose, and we were spending on autopilot. That distinction is everything. The goal was never to spend nothing. The goal was to stop leaking money on things he didn't even remember buying. Think about that phrase for a second. Things you don't remember buying. The subscription you forgot. The upgrade you didn't need. The daily convenience that felt like nothing. Empower's data on consumer spending has repeatedly shown that people underestimate their own subscription and recurring spending by hundreds of dollars a month. Money vanishing on things they'd struggle to even list. That's not a discipline failure. That's a visibility failure. You cannot steer what you refuse to look at. If this is landing, take 1 second and subscribe. This channel breaks down the real numbers behind the lives people are quietly living every single week. Now, the next part is where it separates the people who talk about money from the ones who quietly build it, because I'm about to show you the exact moment the whole illusion flips. The day Marcus retired, something strange happened in that office. The energy shifted. The loud guy, the boat guy, 90 grand, the one we all envied, got noticeably quieter. And a few weeks later, over a beer, he told me why. He said, I make almost twice what Marcus made and I can't imagine ever stopping. He wasn't bragging anymore. He was scared because for the first time he understood that his salary wasn't well. It was a treadmill with a really nice view. The second he stepped off, the whole thing stopped. Marcus had spent 11 years quietly building something that kept paying him after he stopped showing up. The boat guy had built a lifestyle that demanded he show up forever. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. Walk through any office, any neighborhood, and the picture inverts. The people who look richest are often the ones running the fastest just to stay in place, and the plain ones, the beige Camry ones, are frequently the only ones who are actually free. The costume and the reality trade places right in front of you. So what do you actually do with this? Because I don't want you to just feel something and close the app. I want you to be able to move. Start with one honest question before any purchase that matters. Is this the thing I actually value? Or is this autopilot? Marcus's whole system was really just that question, asked consistently. You don't have to cut everything. You have to find the leaks you won't even miss and seal those. Then automate the gap so your willpower never enters the equation. Set an automatic transfer the day after payday, even 1% to start, so the money leaves before your brain can claim it. Raise it every time your income rises, the way Priya did. That's the sequencing fix, and it's the single highest leverage move most people never make. Move your emergency cash into a high-yield savings account, where it earns something real instead of nothing, and stop letting the bank quietly borrow your money for free. Then, for the long money, start with the calmest corner of investing there is, a low-cost, broad market index fund inside a tax-advantaged account. Not exciting, not a story you can tell at a party, just the thing that quietly works while you're asleep. And mute the feed. Seriously, a huge amount of what you spend isn't desire, it's comparison. And comparison is manufactured by watching other people perform lives they often can't afford. You are being outbid by strangers who are also broke. Turn the volume down. None of this requires a corner office salary. That's the whole point. Marcus proved it on $58,000. It was never about your position. It was always about your trajectory, which direction the gap is moving, year after year, quietly, whether or not anyone's clapping. If you want the natural next step, watch the video I'll point you to on building the financial foundation underneath all of this, the boring order in which to actually do these things so nothing collapses. It's the groundwork Marcus laid before any of the rest of it worked. Let me take you back to that blue container. The scratched blue lunchbox, the rice and beans, the man we felt sorry for eating quietly at his desk while the rest of us went out. I told you at the start you were envying the wrong person. Now you know why. Every ordinary lunch in that container was a brick. 11 years of bricks became a wall between Marcus and the treadmill the rest of us are still running on. We looked at that lunch and saw a man with nothing. He looked at it and saw the only thing that was ever really his. The freest man in that building was the one we pitied, and the ones who looked like they'd already won were just further from the exit, holding a nicer costume. Look around your own office tomorrow. The quiet one isn't behind. He's just early. But I want to give you 2 more people before we close for good, because Marcus and Priya can start to feel like exceptions, and they aren't. They're the rule that nobody films. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Dev. Dev was a warehouse supervisor, not corporate, not salaried in the fancy sense, hourly for most of his life, topping out around $62,000 in a good year with overtime. The kind of income the internet tells you can't build wealth. Dev never believed that, mostly because nobody had ever told him the rules, so he made up his own. Every year on his birthday, instead of buying himself something, he increased his automatic retirement contribution by 1 percentage point. That's it. 1 point a year. It was so small he never felt it. The first year it was 3%. 10 years later it was 13%. And he still lived like the guy earning 3. Because the increases tracked his raises, his lifestyle never inflated. The extra money was gone before it could become a habit. By the time Dev was 57, he had just over $500,000 in his accounts on a warehouse income, and the younger guys who out-earned him were stunned. They assumed he'd inherited it. He hadn't inherited a cent. He just refused to let his spending grow every time his paycheck did. That's the whole trick. Lifestyle inflation is the silent tax that eats every raise you'll ever get, and Dev simply opted out. Here's the mechanism underneath what Dev did, because I don't want you to just admire it, I want you to steal it. When your income rises and your spending rises to match, you feel richer for about a month and then you reset to zero. You're running harder for the same feeling. Economists have a cold name for this: the hedonic treadmill. The new car becomes normal. The bigger apartment becomes normal. The upgrade you swore would finally make you feel secure becomes the new baseline you now have to defend. And defending a lifestyle is expensive, permanent work. Dev's move worked because he intercepted the raise before it ever became a new normal. He let his income rise and kept his baseline flat, and the entire difference poured into ownership. That's not deprivation. That's just refusing to let the treadmill speed up. Now let me run the numbers on what that flat baseline actually buys, because I promised you a second one, and this one is bigger than the lunch money. Say you're 35 and you commit to investing $500 a month, not a fortune, roughly what one lifestyle upgrade costs, one nicer apartment, one car payment stretched a little further. You do it until 65. 30 years, 7 to 8% real return. That $500 a month becomes somewhere in the range of $600,000. Now flip it around and feel the weight of it. That means the car payment you're deciding on right now, the one that feels like a normal adult purchase, isn't costing you $500 a month. It's costing you $600,000 of future freedom. The price tag on the window was never the real price. The real price is what that money would have become if you'd let it grow up instead of spending it as a child. And here's the uncomfortable follow-through most people never sit with. Waiting is the most expensive thing you can do. The single biggest driver of that $600,000 number isn't the amount you put in, it's the years you give it. Start the same $500 a month at 45 instead of 35. Lose just 10 years, and the ending number can fall by more than half. The math is brutal and it doesn't negotiate. Every year you tell yourself you'll start once things settle down is a year you can never buy back, because the thing compounding isn't your money, it's your time, and that's the one resource nobody gets more of. This is why Marcus was early and free, and why the loud guy with the boat, starting late and heavy with payments, could out-earn everyone and still never catch up. He had more income. Marcus had more runway. Runway wins. So let me tighten the solutions into something you can actually run tomorrow, because knowing this and doing nothing is its own quiet tragedy. First, find your gap and name it. Track 1 month of real spending, not the fantasy version, the real one, and you'll find the leaks the same way Dev did. Second, automate that gap out of your own reach the day after payday, and raise it 1 point a year on a date you won't forget, the way Dev used his birthday. Third, park your safety cash in a high-yield savings account so it earns instead of rots. Fourth, put your long money in a low-cost, broad index fund inside a tax-advantaged account and then do the hardest thing of all, which is nothing, leave it alone and let time do the part you can't. And fifth, mute the performance. Every account you unfollow that makes you feel behind is money back in your pocket, because most of what you buy isn't want, it's wound. Trajectory over position. Say it back to yourself. It does not matter where you are today. It matters which direction the gap is moving, quietly, whether or not a single person notices. Which brings me back one final time to that scratched blue container. The rice and beans. The man we felt sorry for, eating alone at his desk while the rest of us paid $15 for the privilege of looking like we were doing fine. I told you at the start you were envying the wrong person, and now you understand the whole machine behind it. Every ordinary lunch was a brick. Every skipped upgrade was a year of freedom bought at wholesale. 11 years of bricks became the wall between Marcus and the treadmill the rest of us are still running on, right now, today. We looked at that container and saw a man with nothing. He looked at it and saw the only thing in that building that was ever truly, permanently his. The freest man in the room was the one we pitied. The ones in the costumes were the ones with no exit. And the difference between them was never income, or luck, or a secret nobody else could access. It was a gap, protected quietly for long enough that time turned it into something the rest of us mistook for a miracle. Look around your own office tomorrow. Really look. The quiet one in the corner with the boring car and the packed lunch isn't behind you. He's just early. And now, so are you.